me.
Investigators really.
Cell 12. Center. Incident 420.
Copy, center, cross street.
In center. 9th and center.
Check. Call 9 on a map.
See any other blood, so then just shot him right there. I don't see anything else.
It was pretty scary to hear something like that so close. And you know, we always hear gunshots in this neighborhood. We always hear commotions and fights, whether it's with gangs or drug addicts or whatever they are. They filter into the neighborhood, then they filter right back out. But it's always with a lot of commotion. This was really quiet. That's what's really scary. It was quiet, and it sounds like something that was pretty much planned, or it sounded like professional job.
You didn't see anything?
No, it was, like I said again, it was really quiet. There were no cars screeching by. And when I looked out the window, there was no commotion in the street. It was total darkness. When my brother emerged from his window upstairs, he saw the body on the sidewalk. And they were picking him up. By that time, the police and ambulance already had gotten here.
What did you think when you found him?
Well, I didn't really, I wasn't really sure who he was. My brother
Right back.
No, I didn't. But someone knocked on my door this morning. It was the police. They were asking questions, and just heard that an individual had been shot on the corner of the block. And I asked who it was, and the police officers didn't say it was. Just said we don't know, no identification was on the body.
Was your brother been acting suspicious?
Yeah, my brother came out once he heard, well, a little bit after he heard the shots, and then he heard sirens, maybe 10 minutes after the gunshots. And he came out, looked over his balcony, and he saw the ambulances coming and picking up a body, but I don't think he recognized who it was either.
Hearing gunshots like that, why didn't you figure out?
Well, because in this area it's a pretty common occurrence, and you also get a lot of firecrackers and things, so it was difficult to mix the sounds. But this was loud enough and distinct enough that I recognized it as gunshots, but I didn't hear any commotion afterward, so I didn't pay much attention to it. As long as there wasn't broken glass in the house or anything, I just assumed somebody was toying around with a weapon. Yeah. But when there's a gunshot inside.
Prime time newscast in the country.
Good evening, I'm Elaine Corral.
And I'm Dennis Richmond. Oakland police responding to a report of gunshots and of a body lying in a West Oakland street this morning found former Black Panther leader Huey P. Newton dying in a slowly expanding pool of his own blood. The victim of a gunshot wound, Newton had come full circle, a criminal in the eyes of law enforcement, to some a hero that led many of the nation's blacks into the 70s. More recently, according to others, a crack cocaine user who died on the streets where, for him, it all began. Police tonight say they have no suspects, no motive for the murder of Huey Newton. We have several reports, beginning with Lloyd LaQuesta on what police found when they responded to an emergency call this morning.
Police say when they arrived at 9th and Center Streets in West Oakland at 5:30 this morning, Huey Newton was still alive. An ambulance rushed him to Highland Hospital, where he was pronounced dead at 12 minutes past 6. Paramedics left his shoes and socks behind, which police took for evidence. There was also a 10-foot-long pool of blood where he was found lying face up. The black activist who once preached the power of the gun had died by the gun. Police believe he was shot where he was found.
He was found on a sidewalk, and we're not disclosing how many times he was shot or the caliber of weapon or any other information regarding his wound.
Police say they received a single call reporting the shooting, and that so far they have found no one who actually saw the shooting.
When I seen the man laying down, I saw the blood, and I called my wife through the top window and showed her the man.
Did you know who it was? You have any idea?
I don't know who it was.
Several people say they heard the gunshot this morning, but many didn't pay much attention. Gunfire is not unusual for this neighborhood.
There was no commotion. There was no commotion after the fact. It was just quiet and clean, and it was over, and nobody knew anything.
Okay. At a news conference, police said that while the shooting occurred in a known drug-dealing area, they have no evidence the shooting was drug-related, no motive, and no suspect.
It appears that the person was on the street who fired the shot, so it doesn't appear to be a drive-by.
Police did tow away a maroon Ford Escort, but wouldn't say why. People in the neighborhood say it was the car Newton used when he frequently visited this area.
The car's been out here a lot. I haven't seen who gotten out of the car, but the car has been out here a lot, over a month.
For hours after the shooting, the curious gathered on the street talking about the murder.
Why on this street and at that time of morning? Why would Huey Newton, Dr. Newton, be out on 9th Street, near houses at this time of morning?
Police say what happened on this street was a 97th homicide of the year for Oakland, and police say it's being treated like any other unsolved homicide. In Oakland, Lloyd LaQuesta for the 10 o'clock news.
Over the years, whenever the name Huey Newton came up, it immediately stirred up a lot of controversy. This was a man almost everyone had an opinion about, and in just a moment we'll get to those specific opinions. But generally it can be said that many thought Newton was nothing more than a common criminal, just as many others thought he was an idealist. And some of those people turned out tonight to stage a vigil for the leader they lost. George Watson is in Oakland right now, standing by with a live report. George, what's happening?
Elaine, I'm at the corner of 9th and Center in West Oakland, right across the street from the place where Huey Newton was shot and killed earlier this morning. Now, about an hour ago, there was a candlelight vigil, and people were asking, why Huey Newton and why here?
I want to say something. They're going to say a lot of bad things about Huey. That's cool, because we know who Huey was, and they don't want him to be a hero. One news reporter asked me earlier, well, didn't Huey break the law a lot?
There may have been only 100 or so people here tonight, but Black Power advocates definitely saw this Huey Newton vigil as an opportunity to try and revitalize the civil rights movement, at least here in Oakland. The speeches contained strong condemnations of American society and stronger calls for a recommitment to civil rights in this neighborhood, in this city, in this country. Almost lost in the message was the fact that this was a vigil for Huey Newton. It began tonight at a house where the Black Panther Party had its beginnings 20 years ago. The march eventually wound its way to the house where Huey Newton was killed early this morning. The 3-block march was peaceful and quiet, and a coming together of this West Oakland neighborhood. Earlier today, wreaths of flowers and sad messages were left at the murder site. All of this, the small gathering this afternoon and the larger one tonight, had this mood of what went wrong.
What they did, it was kind of cold, though. It was tricky, It was downright disgusting. It don't make no sense. I mean, why they kill a man down here? This is his home, And I think what they did, it really was uncalled for.
Well, it's a gathering that a lot of people in the community get a chance for them to get to, know each other and stuff like that. And it's a coming together without violence, and I appreciate that.
Huey Newton represented all the oppressed people, Hispanic, Chinese, whatever, it's not all, and poor whites too, he represented a class struggle, really.
There's one other thing I learned from being at that vigil tonight, and so many people came up to me and said, do not refer to this as just a poor project. This is a working class neighborhood and the people are very proud of it, and I just thought I'd pass that message on. Dennis, Elaine?
Thanks very much, George. That was George Watson reporting live from Oakland. The Oakland streets that claimed the life of Huey Newton today are the same streets where he made his controversial reputation. And today his death was the talk on the streets all day. Here's a sample now of how Oakland residents reacted to the news.
They killed King, they killed Kennedy, they killed Marcus Garvey, they killed them all, seemed like.
Oh, I thought he was pretty bad back in the 70s or late 60s. And I think glorifying him today with the candlelight vigil is really not in anybody's best interest.
He was important in the 60s, and I was aware of the things he was doing in the black community in the late 60s and early 70s. I haven't heard about him since, but he was an important leader in his time.
Huey was the type of person who needed preciseness in his theories. He did not really know how to communicate and break those theories down on any real hardcore level, you know. And he told me that, you know, he says, you can do it. And we complimented each other that way.
I had mixed emotions. I guess some of it is, though, I was saddened by it, that it had to end that way. I know his life was surrounded with a lot of controversy, but I guess the way in which he died, more than anything else, put the wrong note on the ending to his life, I think.
Whatever one might say about Huey Newton, this much is obvious. People often had deep emotional responses to him. Some loved him, while others hated this man who was such different things to different people. Randy Shandable has more on the life and times of Huey P. Newton.
To some people, Huey Newton was a heroic visionary. To others, he was a gangster. Perhaps he was a little of both.
I don't think I've ever admired a human being that I've represented more than I admire and respected Huey Newton.
He terrorized people, led a violent life, was involved in drugs, was basically a gangster.
In 1966, Huey Newton, along with Bobby Seale and Eldridge Cleaver, founded the Black Panther Party.
To liberate a class of people who have been held in cultural subjugation in this country.
But unlike civil rights leader Martin Luther King, Newton and his Black Panthers carried guns. Martin Luther King appealed to white society's heart and soul, while the Black Panthers scared all but a few whites. The Panthers carried rifles and shotguns into the state capitol.
Yes, you place him under arrest. Go ahead, brother. Am I under arrest? Take your hands off me if I'm not under arrest.
He brought out the fact that black Americans had dignity. They had the right to bear arms. They had the right to defend themselves. The term Black Panther itself meant that the Black Panther would never attack unless it was attacked.
But for all the good people say Huey Newton did, others say there is the bad. He was arrested in 1967 for killing an Oakland police officer in a shootout. He fled to Cuba in 1974 after he was accused of killing a 16-year-old prostitute and of pistol whipping his tailor. When Newton returned from exile to face charges, he claimed he was set up by a paranoid FBI, the CIA, by the cops, even by the media.
And that's absurd, and I know it. I think that the kind of stuff that you're printing, it's one-sided, and you're the very type of person that the police choose in order to smear me, and I accuse you of being an agent, a snitch, and a person without any integrity.
The methodology was militant. It was confrontational. It was direct in terms of its powerful articulation against the wrongs. But who reaped the benefit of it were people who weren't militant, blacks who weren't militant.
If you could explain to me how pistol whipping of a tailor or shooting of a 16-year-old prostitute is a political crime, I'd be interested in hearing it. To me, they're just basic kind of thug street crimes.
In fact, very few of the many charges Newton faced over the years ever stuck. He'd be in jail for one crime, then out after an appeal. There were drug charges, rape charges, drinking charges, even embezzlement charges.
He didn't change, they destroyed him. The FBI and the law enforcement bodies destroyed him to a point where he became paranoid, and he was no longer the Huey that I ever knew.
The Black Panther Party is now long gone. Bobby Seale is a student and author of a barbecue cookbook. Eldridge Cleaver became a born-again Christian and a Republican. And Huey Newton, the visionary or the gangster, he's dead. In Oakland, Randy Shandeville for the 10 o'clock news.
Another notorious member of the Black Panthers was in the news as well today. A federal appeals court ruled.
How's everybody feeling,
Come on, we're taking your picture.
All right,
I want
come
this.
on, come
What
on.
is this? What is this? Get my picture with him.
How you doing, brother?
I want my picture with him. Get hers too. Wait a minute.
Yeah, come here. Yeah.
Do not discriminate. Get
There
both
we
of
go.
us.
We got everybody.
Okay, all
Good to
right,
see you.
fine. Good to see you. Come on. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. Get it. Go for it. Man, I have my sunglasses on. You didn't since I be on TV. The guy in that car was taking the picture too. Kind of make it, the light be up in the top. And if they're gonna have it, the red light would make him look like he got a little more color and warm or something. Yeah. He looks real kind of cold. That's horrible. And no, you don't know the end of this stuff. The man might have been dead longer than they told us. See? Every time he comes up, well, they have to let me know, Sacramento. So he ain't came up lately, so I guess maybe he just gave up. But it's a horrible feeling to have a loved one shut out like a dog. Yeah, you don't care what they're doing. You don't want your loved one shut out like a dog. I mean, he didn't shoot, you know. Well, you know.